Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Open Observability Talks. I'm your host, Dotan Horovits, and here at Open Observability Talks, we talk about anything DevOps, observability, and open source. So may the open source be with you, as I always say. And we've just celebrated a decade to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the CNCF, just a few months ago. And I thought it's perfect time to invite the CTO and actually co-founder of the CNCF and a dear friend, if I may, Chris Aniszczyk, to join me for a fireside chat to look at what we've achieved, the current status, and also where we're heading. So let me invite Chris. Hey, Chris,
Awesome.
how's it going?
Hey, good to hear from you again. It's happy to be back in the office this January. Trying to remember that the year ends in 2/6 instead of 2/5. It's always that first week struggle
Yeah, we're
that we
recording
all.
that on the first week, and
Yes.
thanks for taking the time straight off the holidays
Yeah,
there up there in the
yeah,
mountains, taking
yeah.
the time and really great to have you back on the show. Last
Mm,
time you were here,
mm.
I think it was 3 years ago in
Yeah,
2023. Now that we're
yep.
2026, and
Mm,
by the way, you're a great supporter to of the community in general and
yep.
this podcast in particular. So a big thanks on behalf of all our
Nice.
listeners and the community members. You even had the honor of cutting the birthday cake on the
I
third
know. Love it.
anniversary of the celebration of the podcast. So
Love it.
it's the closing of the
Yeah.
circle, and now we're nearing the 7th anniversary here at the Open Observability Talk. So who could have thought? And talking about anniversaries, the CNCF just had the 10th anniversary, or as we call it in the CNCF, the C10CF.
Yep.
Uh, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big milestone, right?
Yeah, it's a long time in open source years for sure. So
Yeah.
10 years in open source is a long time, and we were just reflecting with the team this week that we also recently broke 300,000 contributors to all of our CNCF projects. So that's basically on par to like a small country. Essentially that's working together to kind of build the future of open source infrastructure. So yeah, no, we're super excited. We definitely started small, very, very, humble with, about 20 members, just one project, Kubernetes, and now we're over 230, projects, 300,000, contributors. There's 5 KubeCons that happen worldwide in North America, Europe, India, China, Japan. So it's just truly incredible how, small the community started to just this kernel idea of what cloud native could be and just, hit the industry and then kind of embed itself as kind of the default way infrastructure is run at companies, and not only containers and cloud things, but also a lot of the new AI related workloads that essentially need to take advantage of all the scaling and resilience work that we've built in CNCF and cloud native over the last decade.
Yeah, that's crazy. You think about it, running from things out there in up in space and in Mars, all the way to industrial and to home things and entertainment. That's
It,
just crazy, And
yeah.
10 years, it's crazy.
It's a lot, and it's to me it's if people remember in the early days, at least we were very very much kind of heavily focused on orchestration, containers, microservices, right? That was a kind of the 3 bits of what it means to kind of be cloud native. And then as we've kind of grew our community over time, we started to expand that definition, right? It's all about building dynamic systems that are like resilient, observable, scalable, right? And there's a variety of techniques that you need to get that done, right? And so this is what eventually happened with like the expansion of service meshes came into CNCF. Then we had open telemetry through the merger of open tracing and open. Like we expanded our scope to meet where our community and end users were going, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm most proud of our community is like we've always evolved based on end user needs. Like we're not static. Like we've we archive projects, we kind of redo things. There's a day everyone used to use flannel as their preferred CNI, but now it's a little bit different, right? A lot of people use silly. Like it's a constant kind of change and evolution, and I think that's what really leads to healthy communities
Yeah, and
over
then I
time.
think you look today on I think over 230 projects, right? Over
Yeah,
30 graduated projects. That's
yeah,
crazy. The scope.
yeah. It's great, and I think with the rise of AI and inference workloads, especially in the coming years, we're going to see more of an emphasis on CNCF projects being pushed and stretched to kind of support these agentic things. I'm sure over the holidays, a lot of people either themselves or had their kids play with all sorts of little AI tools, and it's literally getting embedded in everything, right? Like I just like
Yeah.
almost every website I go to is like, all right, they've embedded some AI inference related thing, and just like supporting not only the traditional infrastructure that is complicated enough at scale, but adding an additional layer of like, all right, we need to have like constant inference happening that integrates with like, I don't know, Google Docs or whatever. Pick your pick your CRM of choice, pick your BI tool of choice, right? All that stuff is being integrated and requires a lot of extra scalability required, which we're the experts in CNCF
Yeah.
at.
And I think even before the
Yeah.
launch of AI, we've seen the scope. If I try to look back, I just wrote
Yep. Yep.
a blog post summarizing this decade, at least from my own personal experience as a CNCF ambassador
Yep.
and I guess an evangelist of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. But the ever growing scope. So it started as Kubernetes, and then the
Mm-hmm.
immediate circle in the DevOps domain, let's say. But then you
Mm-hmm.
saw far wider topics. You saw FinOps, you saw
Mm-hmm.
platform engineering, you saw chaos engineering. You just
Mm-hmm.
need to look at today's CNCF landscape and how many categories you have, not to mention that. So it's I guess in a way it begs the question, what's the scope of cloud native these days?
I mean, I think that's for our community to decide. Like, we've evolved. The definition, I think, for cloud native maybe three times officially. Like I'm actually looking at it now and I'm pulling it up and it's a V11, right? And it's kind of that thing I mentioned before about like, hey, these are workloads that are characterized by loosely coupled systems that interop in a manner that is secure, resilient, manageable, sustainable, and observable, right? Like that's cloud native, regardless of whether your workload is a container, CPU bound or GPU bound or a WASM module, whatever, right? Like, as long as these things could be secured, resilient, scalable, observable, that's kind of in our scope. So we're not kind of locked into one particular workload type, which I like, and maybe we'll have an updated definition for maybe this next decade of AI that we're in. But I think the current definition meets pretty much what is expected of AI workloads in production at scale, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then I think the other interesting thing is that, it all started around Kubernetes, right? With
Yeah.
Google open sourcing and donating it.
Yeah.
I actually had Kelsey Hightower here on the show to note the 10th
Nice.
anniversary of Kubernetes. It was
Yeah.
fascinating discussion. But even Kubernetes itself, which is like sort of the core, the thing that
Mhm.
was the most stable throughout the tenure, even that has evolved drastically. So, Kubernetes today is what the second
Yeah.
only to Linux itself as the
Basically,
highest
yeah.
velocity project. Yeah? So, it's
Pretty
in
much,
its
yeah.
scope. It's not just the orchestration for
Mhm.
containers. It's pretty
Mhm.
much today like the operating system for cloud native in a way. So,
Mhm.
how do you view the journey that Kubernetes has gone? That's interesting to hear.
I think like the cool thing about Kubernetes, where I'll give credit to a lot of the original folks involved, Brian Grant, Tim Hawken, I think kept a very close eye on ensuring that, I think there's a natural desire when you build, a popular piece of software to like continually add things, like add features, bulk up, bulk up. And I think the things that the original architects of Kubernetes have done, well, are two things. One is basically we prevent kind of feature bloat in some ways, where like they're like, hey, some things we're going to move out of tree, like all the storage stuff, we're going to, get rid of, that, have CSI built, hey, we're going to do this container runtime interface. They were very like diligent, I think, about that. And I think that's has helped kind of, keep the quality high while also not like polluting and having a lot of natural sprawl that is popular, like that is reasonable for any largely wide piece of software. The other thing is like the user experience, I think, kind of continues to evolve. Obviously a lot of people got started with Kubernetes probably with tools like, Minikube, and now things like K3s exist. Even Kubernetes itself is redoing its kind of dashboard experience, which I'm sure everyone both has a love and hate for that very generic Kubernetes dashboard, but that essentially is going to be deprecated, this year, and I think there's going to be a desire to push people towards other options like Headlamp, which is another CNCF projects that kind of gives you more of that Docker desktop style experience, which I think in general just makes Kubernetes easier to use for more people. So yeah, I just respect the Kubernetes community a lot in just keeping a tight um, uh, let's call it a tight quality control of ensuring that not everything is kind of jammed in there, and we'll see where it goes in the next 10 years with the AI boom. They've been
Yeah.
putting a lot of work in the DRA component to ensure that things like GPUs, TPUs, and other even custom FPGAs that are maybe running inference-based workloads are supported well, and that's just, I think, great architecting and great work by that team. And I think the spirit of Kubernetes has always been like, we'll work on any cloud, any private thing, any CPU, and now obviously like any GPU, TPU, etc. So I think that cloud native spirit goes well with kind of the AI world, where like obviously there's uh, I would say a dominant architecture and platform that a lot of people run their AI workloads, but there's a strong desire to have support on different providers out there. Like there's this kind of rise of GPU first, or sometimes people say neo cloud, micro cloud, like whatever you want to call it, that are just popping up to run inference or GPU based things, right? So Kubernetes being able to support those types of systems easily is awesome, in my opinion. Definitely aligned with the original vision for the
Yep.
project.
And I think also,
Mm-hmm.
I guess the biggest thing that I've seen is that Kubernetes has evolved, I guess, or was elevated from being the tool to being the convention or the
Yeah,
standard.
yeah,
So people can work with the Kubernetes API and with the conventions and with the
mm,
the JSONs, the YAML,
mm,
sorry, and
yeah,
all but the implementation underneath the hood could be optimized for inference, for AI workload, for
yeah,
GPUs, for industrial automation, for whatnot, while you have this common language to
yeah.
interact that
Eh,
is agnostic of that's amazing. That's like elevating to the level of Linux, as we said when
yeah.
we take the analogy, right?
Yeah. And honestly, like I think Linux is a good analogy, because the way Linux started was, obviously Linux in the beginning was never, intended to ship on, phones or satellites, embedded systems, right? It was very much, a little operating system that people extended to work well for, server workloads, which now almost every server-based workload is this running on some Linux, system, especially the HPC, high performance workloads. And, the community stretched Linux to support, into embedded systems, real-time system. And that took time, right? Linux, I think, is 34, maybe turning
34
30,
years,
30.
yeah.
See, I think it's gonna
Yeah,
be turning
35, now
35,
it's 26,
35
yeah.
this year. So wow, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to do some type of special party for that. Like there's Linux turns 35 and hits its midlife crisis, where Kubernetes enters its almost teenage years soon. But people are doing the same thing with Kubernetes, where they realize, oh, like we don't have to recreate a whole brand new orchestrator for like GPU or inference based workloads. We probably need to make some changes and additions, and that plumbing changes. Like even Linux is going through like, hey, we're supporting Rust based modules, and just
The
that to
forbidden
me
word until not
yeah,
far long ago, huh?
yeah, exactly, right. And that's a healthy thing to ensure your technology sticks around for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say also a word about
Yeah.
the community. So, having
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of contributors from over, I think I looked, 190 plus countries. That's insane. You and I
Yeah.
just came back from
Yeah.
the Open Source Summit Japan. It was amazing
Yeah.
for me, at least, to
Yeah.
see the community in Japan,
Yeah.
and how vibrant it is, and how
Yeah.
engaged it is. And the month before that, in Open Source Summit Korea, and like
Yeah.
we're all over the world. You have passionate users and contributors,
Yeah.
and even maintainers, and so on. So and we see them active on GitHub and on Slack,
Mm,
and in person. And
mm,
I personally had the pleasure of also running a local CNCF chapter, and
yeah.
with regular meetups, and organize a
Mhm.
KCD event, and a Cube
Mhm.
Days event, and speak
Mhm.
in numerous ones
Yeah.
around the world. So these are like the places where you actually get to meet in person, beyond
Mhm.
the virtual. So
Yeah.
tell us about the community behind the cloud native movement.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. Like, I think in the beginning we were very much focused on very, I would say, Bay Area, hyperscale, North American centric, type community that kind of expanded, over time. Obviously we moved to Europe, and we did KubeCon Europe, and then, we did KubeCon in China, because, China is a ranked number, 2 or 3 overall contributor to a lot of our, projects. And we expanded into India, because India was in the top 5, and then Japan. So it's like we generally keep going where our end users, are, and contributor community is. And, we've had to kind of come up with interesting ways to meet them, because, we've talked to some people and they're like, oh, we want a KubeCon in every continent. And I'm like, great, right? And when people realize, I think a lot of people don't realize the overall staff for CNCF is, I would say, about 35 people, where the majority of them are focused on almost events and community management work. And so it's very difficult, sometimes, for people to, travel, put on these events. It's tricky. So we launched a variety of things. We have a great meetup program that you're very much familiar with, community.cncf.io, where people will host things all over, from San Francisco to, Bangladesh to Tel Aviv to Barcelona. Like, I've attended a lot of these community meetings all over the world, and it's just been, awesome. Then we're like, well, we can't bring KubeCons in every place. Maybe we could do something a little bit smaller. Let's do Kubernetes community days, right? And kind of have community run events that we could support a little bit with the foundation, but, have that community, flair. And we probably do about 20 to 30 KCDs at least a year, and they're all over. I'm already committing to attending 4, this, this year, where I think KCD in Finland will be one of them that I'm finalizing
Oh,
actually today,
nice.
my travel, for. But it's been a great program, and, I think it's the cool thing is seeing people from different backgrounds. Like, obviously we have a lot of, engineers involved, but people, contribute in a variety of different ways. We have folks that, help with documentation, help with hosting events, do DevRel activities, help with market, like, all over. And just seeing folks from all different backgrounds helping and contributing is one of the things that, like, I'm probably one of the most things I'm most proud about in the last 10 years, is making sure that this community feels that, like, you could contribute in any way. You don't have to necessarily be a crazy, good, Golang developer, right? You could just be someone that's willing to learn, maybe a little DevRel, maybe you could translate in your local language. Like, people have always been so friendly, I think, from day one, to encourage participation from all, backgrounds, which is awesome to see. It's just a little bit hard for our small team sometimes to, keep up with
That's true.
everything. So yeah.
That's true, and I think also as a CNCF ambassador,
Yeah.
seeing the variety also amongst the ambassadors themselves, and
Yeah.
how people, from
Yeah.
the different geos and territories and
Yeah.
whatnot, just spring with great ideas, and they know the community, so they are able to come up with the right mix that is,
Yeah.
I guess, right for their community, in their flair. So I think this is amazing, and also takes some of the load off from you folks run these things. So that's amazing.
Yeah. It's the only way truly to scale. I mean, I sometimes have funny conversations where people don't like, oh yeah, we've heard of like CNCF and Kubernetes, and for some reason people just assume that we have like the staffing of like an Amazon or Google for what we do. And I'm like, no, I'm like, hey, we're a nonprofit with about 30 to 40 people total that is part of a larger nonprofit, the Linux Foundation, which is only about 300 or so people. So people get a little bit shocked when they hear that. And some of the people that have been involved, at least with CNCF for a while, and have met some of the staff, not only the leadership, but like the great events team we have, and some of the great folks that we have helping projects like Gphy and Bob Colleen, et cetera. They realize like, oh, there's actually not too many people involved making the ship move
and
move
by the way,
forward.
if you already mentioned the
Yeah.
the events and the great things, so we are about to have a KubeCon,
Yeah.
right? KubeCon Europe
Yeah.
in Prague this year, in just
Oh,
75 days,
it'll be
and the
Amsterdam,
Amsterdam,
not
sorry,
Prague.
Amsterdam,
Yeah.
Prague. Yeah, I was thinking about
Oh,
Open Source Summit. Yeah, but
open
Europe, but
source summit.
in Amsterdam, yeah. Going back to Amsterdam, that's brings back
Yeah.
good memories for folks who been there the last time around.
Yeah.
And the agenda is already up, and maybe you can tell us a
Yeah.
bit. We saw some very interesting things there.
Yeah. So, we posted the schedule recently, and I'm very excited about the program. We're aiming to have over 12,000 people there. We have our typical colo related schedule where there's co-located events. The first kind of day we call it day zero. So things like Backstage Con, Argo Con, Key Club Con, Observability day, platform engineering
Yeah,
day, et cetera. We have a lot of those events happening, and then we have our kind of traditional 3-day KubeCon program where we have great talks from all over. Like we were just chatting a little bit where I was looking at some of the talks and just like seeing how Airbnb does platform engineering at scale using CNCF projects, or how I think it was DigitalOcean was like, hey, we rebuilt our whole observability stack, killed the old one, and rebuilt it with OTel, and moved from 12 engineers to 4 with across like 20,000 clusters. And you're just like, wow, that's pretty wild, right? And so like I'm
yeah.
loving like kind of the talks that reflect true at scale usage, where these companies and individuals are just sharing lessons that other people could kind of learn from, right? It's nice when other people make the mistakes and you kind of benefit from them, which is to me one of my favorite parts of KubeCon, is always like hearing a new company like, oh, we did this, and we couldn't, we messed up here, and then we fixed it, and then we share it. And it just, I love that kind of constant knowledge sharing and humility that comes. And I think that's one of the reasons most people attend KubeCon and find it valuable, right? Obviously you have vendors there, but it's truly the individuals that are kind of driving the talks, the program committee. I think a lot of people don't realize is that the CNCF leadership team, we don't really choose the talks. Like we have our community joins and participates through a program committee. They generally have to be ambassadors or maintainers or contributors in some way, and they help choose and kind of vet the talk. So it has a very kind of community feel, even though you have the world's largest companies involved
Yeah,
with
and being there on these content committees, I can tell you this is a hard task. They have the best speakers and the best talks and the best topics in the world, and having to choose. And also, as a speaker, it's very, very hard to get accepted because
Yeah.
the level is so high. So I had the honor of being there once on stage, but still,
Yeah.
it's like so crazy to see the quality. And by the way, also
Yeah.
for me, the
Yeah.
hallway track, being able to chat with these
Yeah.
with other practitioners, with other users, exchange the knowledge, not just on the formal talks, but just
Yeah.
chat. And then you realize that someone not far from you is dealing with the same issues, or maybe already solved them, and you create the most amazing, or maintainers and the contributors that are finding linkage between different projects
Yeah.
and how they can collaborate, or end users to it's really the connections that come out that are
Yeah.
fantastic.
it's the project pavilion area, especially where I try to encourage folks. Like if you ever wanted to go talk to a maintainer, behind your favorite project, Prometheus, OpenTelemetry, Kubernetes,
Yeah.
gRPC, they'll be there, right? And you're gonna, go talk to them. And that's one of the things that, we talk to our end users that they value is just having access to maintainers. Obviously a lot of them, everyone gets pitched by vendors. That's just like the nature of business. But having the option to see like both what's out there from a vendor point of view, but also like being able to talk to the maintainers and maybe get their
Yeah.
perspective on like what features are coming or things are missing. And I think it's always a delicate balancing, act when you have a community of like, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
you don't have enough. You're missing some vendors, you don't have enough community things, or you don't have this. And so we always try to kind of, every year balance things out based on based on feedback. That project pavilion over the years has gotten a lot nicer. I will say
Yeah,
is
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I'm especially proud of the hotel observatory that has become
yep,
its own realm. And actually, it was very useful. I'm also
mm, mm,
a lead
mm,
for a SIG,
mm,
special interest group for the CI/CD observability. And the fact that we had like slots that we shared between the different SIGs and working groups and whatnot,
yeah,
then the ability that we could just take one of these slots and just have folks reach over to us and ask questions and engage in conversation. And we ended up like suddenly having like a circle of folks interested in CI/CD observability, ideating and proposing ideas and wanting to get
mm,
engaged. And this is just from one KubeCon's 1 hour slot
yeah,
inside the Open Telemetry Observatory. So
yeah,
it's really
awesome.
amazing to see this. And then I had a chat like even last
Mm,
KubeCon North
mm,
America, I had a chat with
mm,
on the other scale like
mm,
a sandbox project. So they only get a
mm,
slot of a
yeah,
project pavilion, but even
mm,
that slot has proven
yeah,
to be that was Percy's project in the observability
yeah,
space,
yeah, yeah,
and I was talking to the maintainer and he said this was so impactful that that slot was people reached out and they discovered well, some of them have not heard of the project or they discovered, others
yeah,
said that they're
yeah,
already using it. He was surprised to hear that so many users from around the world using them, and then the discussion around how they use it and ideas forward. So this is really
yeah.
really impactful. If you are going to KubeCon, that's for the
Yeah.
audience.
Mhm.
Don't stay around just in the place where they have the fancy pavilions of the vendors. Go to the other part of the
Yeah.
hallway where
Yeah.
you'll see the project pavilions. Are smaller, but again, you'll meet the maintainers and the
Yeah,
project
and,
managers.
and you'll be surprised. Like Perseus is a perfect example. I think a lot of people still don't, realize that, they're building this kind of modern, dashboard for a lot of different observability, systems, right? So having,
Yeah.
being exposed to just like, even from my perspective, like I know what Perseus is, but sometimes, you're just like got 200 plus projects, and then it's like, oh, that's like someone, like someone on the team said, like, oh, the project Hammy wants to go talk, and I'm like, Hammy, what is Hammy? Like, and in my mind, it's like, oh crap, that's like they're like this little GPU sharding. So it's like sometimes there's just so many things that sometimes even when you're in the thick of things, you kind of forget, and that pavilion experience just truly exposes, you to different technology and options out there.
Yeah, yeah. So do definitely again if you go
Yeah.
check it out, and remember that places are getting busy, hotels and stuff. So and it's just 70 something days away. So go ahead and RSVP and
Yeah,
join us. I'll be there
76.
as well. And yeah, 76 days. So I'll be there. Chris will be there. So
Yeah.
hope to see you
Eh,
there. And I'll also be
Yeah.
obviously on the observability day, being
Yeah.
the observability talk. So catch up on
Eh,
the collocated events day. Really, really exciting to see that. I also wanted to
Yeah.
look a bit, shift
Mm,
gears, and
Sure.
now that we're beginning of 2026, give us your predictions of what's up for the coming year. What's going to be the focus? What's going to be
I'll,
the main thing for
I'll
the community?
I'm trying to think where to start, because I've been working on my, kind of blog post around like cloud native predictions for this year, and I'm finalizing it this week, and we'll post it next week. But since I'm, technically on a observability podcast, I think one of the things that has been kind of floating in my mind is we're in a boom cycle with kind of a rise of AI usage and workloads, right? And a lot of companies kind of have to adapt in many ways, right? Whether it's training talent, using different tools, and usually as part of these cycles, what happens in industry is you get a lot of both boom bust consolidation, right? And one interesting thing that happened, at least over the holidays, was I saw Palo Alto Networks, security company, traditionally, right? Let's call it a traditional security vendor, went and I spent, I think, a couple $1 billion to acquire an observability company, like let's call it a modern one, Chronosphere, right? And so you have a traditional security company that had no real offerings, right? Like let's call it in observability, go pick this up. And to me, what that shows is I think all all traditional large scale security vendors are going to have some type of observability solution in their portfolio of products, right? And so I think you're going to see a lot more consolidation happen in that space where, I think in order to do security properly, you need to have strong observability at the end of the day, right? And so I think we're going to see more of that happening in the industry, especially as like we're in this kind of boom cycle. So that's kind of maybe one prediction is the line between security and observability vendors was a little bit blurry before. It's going to be, very much less blurry now. I think they're going to be one and the same pretty soon. I just think it won't be optional for companies these
Yeah.
days to survive. So I'll start with that. And given that you've been spending a lot of times in the observability space, you have your probably own views and perspectives. But that's kind of what I'm feel like Google buying Wiz also not
Yeah.
not fully related, but definitely related to this problem of how to do security and observability at scale. So
No, definitely, and also wearing my hat with
yeah.
different vendors, I've seen this consolidation and the security analytics and the
Hmm.
IT ops type of analytics is
Yeah.
definitely emerging. Ultimately, it boils down to the same principles. It's all about data analytics at the end, and now
Yeah.
with the agentic power, I think a lot of that will also shift from the dashboard oriented
Hmm.
flows where you
Hmm.
count on humans to visually identify the
Yeah.
patterns and the correlations to something that
Yeah.
would be more agent based. I think this is
Yeah.
also something that will help unify it, because when people thought, okay, but security, these are the sorts of tool sets and the disciplines, whereas observability, IT observability, let's call it, is more on these dashboards and these types of flows, and then these sorts of
Hmm.
root cause analysis flows. Suddenly when you bring in the engine that does the analysis for you,
Yeah.
it doesn't look, you realize it boils down to something very, very similar.
Yeah, no, no, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, you're collecting data and signals, and whether, however it comes, to you and what you're actually looking at, the type of analysis and work you kind of have to do is similar, right? And I think
Yeah.
traditionally the way people collected data, whether it was like through proprietary, agents or some kind of crazy things, that they've may have done in the Windows world, like all this stuff, I think is consolidating way where there's hotel collectors almost for for everything these days, and continues to kind of the breadth is going right. And so when you have a consistent way to collect this information, you could do a lot more uh exciting things for sure. So that's yeah, that I think that's like something that kind of comes to mind from the observability space. The other thing that I've already had a couple meetings on, in the last week or so, is kind of this intersection between both the worlds of like CNCF, FinOps, and AI, where a lot of the last year or so, a lot of people's largest bills, may have moved from, let's call it traditional, maybe compute, or hey, maybe my Datadog bill is too high, to like this. These AI related services are expensive, right? And now has hit my biggest budget item, and how do we make sure that we use these things efficiently, and so on. So I think the overall trend thing here is around just like FinOps practices to AI workloads is for sure, it's already happening. It's going to increase this year. People like to spend money, and as long as they get value, but I think we were just such in this like innovation phase where people are like, all right, my CFO and CEO is yelling at me for like use AI, make things efficient, and then use AI, maybe things are efficient, but you're spending a lot more money to get there. And so
To
there's
be
like this
efficient.
yeah. So there's like a natural cycle that happens with technology where, hey, something new, people shake out, and then, I think people get a lot more hey, let's go look at what options are. Maybe, we will use other GPU providers. There's actually kind of one of the other, trends that I'm seeing is kind of the rise of these, micro clouds, neo clouds. Sometimes they're GPU first, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just a cloud that benefits from, maybe being an environment where digital sovereignty, is important. I'm sure in your part of the world, you've heard of like OVH and Ionis in Europe, right? And a lot of countries are having these smaller clouds where a lot of times they do provide like a Kubernetes service, and sometimes they do provide a way to run inference-based workloads. So I think you're going to see a lot more variety happen in that way, and especially with things like Kubernetes and even the new AI conformance program that we launched last year. That's really about ensuring that you have some baseline level of interop across these different systems. So I think obviously hyperscalers aren't going away, but I think you're going to see a lot more optionality, especially for the different options out there, especially for inference-based workloads. There's a lot of different, like there's RunPod, there's CoreWeave, like there's a lot of these companies that have popped up, and I see people using them combined with stuff in the hyperscale. So there's just a lot more competition, I think, that will force people to use different things.
Yeah, and definitely I see a lot in Europe
Hmm.
the pressure with sovereignty that is a major concern that drives also these localized services that diversify this
Yeah,
market and these offerings.
yeah.
So they may not have the full portfolio that the hyperscalers have, but when you
Uh,
need something very specific, as you said, like the
mm,
inference that will run locally on your
mm,
in your geo or something like
mm.
that, you definitely can find alternatives.
And I think maybe the final prediction that I think reveal for you is like I believe by the end of this year, I think the top three contributor to almost every major open source project will essentially be an AI bot or agentic related system is how I see it. It is like you're going to have folks that obviously still review and maintain, but I think there's going to be kind of an explosion of contributions coming from these systems. So I think, which leads to a bit of a different problem of it just means you have to review more things as maintainers. But I think there's going to be it's something that the open source community is going to figure out over um, over time, where we're basically entering a kind of new generation of tools. I spent the holidays playing with a variety of different things: Goose, Opus, Cloud Code, just a variety of these tools, and they are getting significantly better, and I think you're going to see most developers using them, more tools out there to automate these things, and just it happening automatically, even without developer full input. So I think that is my maybe more controversial, prediction. But I think most of the, top three contributors, at least AI bots will rank in the top three contributors for a lot of major open source projects in the coming year.
Uh,
So
Yeah, that's interesting, especially since
yeah.
I've in discussions between maintainers and
Mhm.
approvers and all of that, you've seen also a lot of noise coming in with code that is AI generated, which made the moderation. By the way, it even gave me flashbacks from the days that Stack Overflow was struggling with auto-generated responses that the moderators, the mods needed to filter out to the extent that at some point they just blocked it. They wouldn't allow for AI generated answers or things like that, because so you got, if you measure that by the velocity, you would get the biggest volume would be that. But the question is, I guess, how to factor that also with the quality and how much you needed to filter out or all that.
Yeah, I think review is going to increase in importance of already reviewing, senior maintainership, kind of growing. The folks that actually review code and merge it in will continue to go up, but I think the production gets significantly easier for people of all skill levels, right? And so trying to kind of figure out how to manage that inbound is going to be tricky, I think, for a lot of projects. And these things have gotten a lot better, and so it's something that I worry about a little bit, because a lot of projects, some maintainers obviously gainfully employed and it's their full-time job to work things, but not always, right? And sometimes folks get a little bit stressed out when you have to have all this extra review, especially for important things like the kernel or Kubernetes and other projects that just have like a huge install base, that anything that kind of gets in there, that could potentially, cause issues across the world is tough, right? So, but I think like there's the genie's, out of the bottle, and I think we're just going to have to figure out, do we start to have like tools that we create, that help manage the inbound of contributions and prioritize. I think there's just going to be some questions this year, and we've been actually like looking at some of the data inside the Linux Foundation, and clearly a lot of these tools are increasing, in usage, and it's not only your depend-a-bot style things, right? These are people sending pull requests generated with a lot of these AI tools. So it's we'll see what happens. I think it'll be a fun discussion. I'm actually looking forward to. There's another conference I usually go at the start of the year called FOSDEM, which is out of Brussels.
I'll see you at FOSDEM. Yeah, that's cool.
So it's a lovely gathering of something around 7, 8, 9,000. They never have an official number, but it's a good amount of people, and it's very much open source developer focus, and so that is usually kind of the event where I kind of look and talk to folks to kind of figure out what are other communities seeing, how are they handling, how are they managing things, and I'm just like, we'll see what happens, but I do think there'll be quite a big change this year.
And by the way, for those who haven't tried FOSDEM, I highly recommend, especially if you're passionate about open source, and if you're in Europe, and it's even easier, although many come also from North America and all over the world. But it's like the place. I think it's the biggest, like let's say, organic, not foundation-led or vendor-led or whatnot in the world. And the beauty is that it's really self-organized. And this is why you don't even know how many people attend, because there are no tickets and no official. So it's the barrier to entry is zero. And I'm happy that my talk got accepted. So this year I'll also be on stage talking about the OpenSearch project.
Nice.
But anyway, this is an amazing place. I should note, since we're in Open Observability Talks, that the day after FOSDEM this year, we'll have the OTEL Unplugged collocated or fringe event. So if you are into observability and specifically about OTEL, there'll be an unconference the day after FOSDEM in Brussels, the same city. So do check it out. Again, a community organized, nothing official, but pretty cool. So inviting our audience that is going to be at FOSDEM to join. And I guess one more thing that is interesting, we talked a lot about AI, is also an announcement now, putting your hat on with the senior leadership at the Linux Foundation, is an announcement that just came out last month, just a few weeks ago. When I was at Open Source Summit Japan, actually, it was exciting. It's the hottest chat that day in the conference, which is the announcement of the AIF, the Agentic AI Foundation under the Linux Foundation. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's been an interesting effort. The Linux Foundation, we're always about kind of building neutral communities and providing people, a level playing field for companies and projects to kind of get along. And we had some interesting discussions about a year ago with the MCP, team, and obviously MCP only being a little over a year old now, was it was still early days, but there was a strong desire to eventually do something and potentially build a neutral community at that project. But you know, sometimes projects take a little bit time to grow before they enter a foundation. And MCP grew like crazy, right? There was just so many MCP servers being built from every database service, almost technology you kind of think of. And problems that kind of arose in that kind of year gap was one. Obviously, when MCP was created, it was kind of solving a very basic problem of how to kind of structure data to be useful for AI agents to kind of talk
Okay.
to and do things, right? Like that was kind of the idea. But kind of kind of worked out. But obviously, when you kind of design and build something, you don't always think about security and how to do things maybe at enterprise scale, yada yada. And so the project had to kind of evolve a little bit. There was a lot of issues around there's multiple forks done. IBM, I think, had a fork called ACP. There was others that we came across. So everyone was kind of like, all right, we're going to improve MCP and make it work for our needs. And so this kind of bifurcation and fragmentation that was happening is not good for anything. That's
Yeah.
almost like back in the early days in the container days, where you had different image specs, different ways to run containers through AppC or runs. Like it was a mess. And so there was an idea of like people not wanting to make that mistake again. And so started a lot of discussions, and like, you know what, there seems to be kind of like a missing layer, at least at the Linux Foundation, for folks that want to do like agentic related development, right? Like, and kind of the way I see things, at least, and most of us at the Linux Foundation see, we kind of see like three main layers for kind of this AI stack. You have like the training bit, right? People are using PyTorch or Slurm or even Kubernetes to train all these models. You have inference, which at the heart is kind of running these models to provide services like ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera. And that's using a lot of CNCF projects to both scale, observe, and kind of do inference properly. And then you have the kind of agent layer, like how do agents talk to each other, how do you manage them, yeah. And we didn't really have anything in that space, and MCP was kind of a cornerstone project. So once we started talking to the MCP team and kind of the other companies involved, like, well, we should go bring in some other related projects. OpenAI had this agents markdown spec that essentially kind of became a de facto thing that they wanted to kind of donate and standardize. You had Goose, which worked closely with the MCP team to basically provide, for lack of a better analogy, but maybe for a container audience, it's kind of like a Docker desktop experience for managing MCP servers, right? It's a very great tool that I almost recommend anyone that's new to the space start with a tool like Goose to really play with MCP servers. And so we got these folks together, and there was kind of a strong desire. All right, like we have a core set of folks. We got the hyperscalers, we got OpenAI, Anthropic, we got some end users, with Block and Bloomberg and clouds, Cloudflare, Microsoft, Google. Yeah, let's go. Let's bring everyone together, and let's stop the fragmentation and truly go build out like the base technology that is going to be required to make agentic AI successful for the enterprise and end users out there, because there's no need to fight over forks of different related project. Let's start harmonizing, right? And then we announced that late last year as building fully formed, and it's kind of been off to the races. The first board meeting was held late last year, and we're doing MCP Dev Summit is happening in New York, I believe, in April 2nd and 3rd. So that's a whole other community that is building up. But I think there's a lot of interesting, problems to solve in that space. But, back to my layering example, like people care about agents. Agents got to run, somewhere, usually on, Kubernetes. Inference happens usually in Kubernetes world, and then, people train models that a lot of these, agents use. So you have these three layers that I think now the Linux Foundation kind of hosts across different ecosystems. So that's the quick maybe rundown, but it is very early days. So
Yeah.
they just bootstrap. They only have 3 projects. There's a lot of people interested in bringing potentially more projects, but they're still in the bootstrap phase. They got their board formed. They're going to just figure out how to do their TOC equivalent and all that good stuff. So we got people in the door. We're hosting the goods in a neutral way, and now it's like, all right, go play, go figure it out.
And I think this is one of the things that I like about the
Yeah, yeah,
CNCF in general, that it's
yeah,
not it doesn't take the opinionated path, that
yeah,
this is the way to do it. It's, you can definitely find more than a single project in the CNCF stack that will
yeah,
serve the same purpose, or largely the same
yeah,
purpose, and
yeah,
it's up to the community to decide what is the best fit. Sometimes one of them will perish and the other one will
yeah,
be the winner. Some of them, sometimes each one will find its own niche.
yeah,
Sometimes they will. So it's really the fact that, yeah, you go ahead and the community will decide what works for the community, right?
yeah. And I think that's always the best, approach. And I think CNCF stumbled a little bit there, mostly through a bit of my persistence and the late Dane Khan's persistent of like, I think. Optionality and competition is almost always best for long-term and longevity and the best solution for end users, but it comes with a short-term cost of potential confusion and so on for end users. Because I'm sure you've experienced this, at least at KubeCon, the amount of conversations where it's like, yeah, y'all have like 5, 6 service meshes at least, and like which one do I choose? Why is there only one? And I think for us, it's always been like that. That is the for end users and vendors to fight about, right? It's not the role of the foundation to provide you just one way to doing things, because you'll end up with a stagnated solution. And I'm excited to see hopefully something similar happen with the agent world, with the AIF, and as they kind of get started, right? They're still I find them still in that like in the days when CNCF, we had the container wars where people were fighting over like image specs and AppC Docker versus CoreOS. Like they were kind of getting there, and then with the AI forming, I feel like that will hopefully go to the wayside, and then they could kind of really start focusing on the value generation for that. Because just like in CNCF, like no one really cares about the image spec. We're just thankful there's a standard and it works, it's everywhere. It's all the other stuff on top that's important. So
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Dan Khan was
yeah,
that's bring us full circle to the 10th
yeah,
anniversary, and sort of
yeah,
the original founding spirit of the CNCF, and how it all connects together. Even when you look forward into the age of AI, and with the new foundation and everything else,
yeah.
it all boils down to these basic principles that
Mm,
have
mm,
driven the community for over a decade. So
yeah.
uh, that's a good place to close, to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much, Chris, for joining me and for
Yeah.
sharing your
Uh,
insights, and this amazing journey that you've taken us together through the CNCF in the past decade.
No, thank you, and honestly, a lot of thanks to you for helping build a local community, and you're part of the world and participating. I know a lot of this, blends the work time with personal time and family time. So I truly appreciate all the work you've done. It truly is the thing that to me I enjoy the most. Like just the people that show up, help each other out. Great hospitality. I definitely appreciate the hospitality when I was in visiting you in Tel Aviv. So it's like I just love that part about our community. Everyone showing up, helping out in their local areas to kind of benefit the worldwide cloud native community. So it's awesome. So thank you again for all the great work
Yeah,
that you've
thank
done.
you. And again, exciting to see the what the next decade comes and
Yeah.
brings us. So carry on with the leadership there. And I want to also thank our listeners for joining us on this episode. That was a great opening for 2026, for a new year. And as always, all the episodes are available on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. You'll also have the link on how to catch up with Chris on social media and where to find him. So don't worry, you'll have all the links there. And of course, you're welcome to also follow the show on social media, on X, on Blue Sky, on LinkedIn, whatnot. And until next month's episode, I'm Dotan Horovits. Thank you very much for listening, and may the open source be with you.